Hi YouTube, my name is Jack, and today we're going to talk about community and kind of community outside of one's own specific path within Wicca or witchcraft or paganism or whichever umbrella term you want to stick yourself under. I had a friend visiting this week. They are doing sort of a train tour of the western United States, and they were coming from Reno, Nevada, through Salt Lake City on their way to Denver. So they stopped here in Salt Lake City, and we got to spend some time here. And it was really nice to have a friend from out of town, that I could kind of show my new haunts to and things like that. But also it was really nice to have a pagan friend that I knew from before I moved out here. And it's got me thinking a lot about the importance of community. Right? Religion is, by and large, a community thing. You have solitary practitioners, but a lot of the time, even with solitary practitioners, there's this desire to share with other people at least some of your experiences and some of what that's like. So even if you're practicing on your own, a lot of the time you still at least want people that you can talk to about it. And yeah, I mean, just like community matters. Community is a really important thing. And since I have moved out to Salt Lake City, I'm in the process of building up connections here and building pagan community. But that takes time, and I've noticed its absence. I have a previous video from when I first moved here about community, specifically in the context of initiatory Wicca, where my main point in that video is that the fundamental community unit in Wicca is the coven, and that sort of concerns about like the wider community of the tradition, while they're still sort of there, they're significantly less pressing and noticeable than the community you find in your own coven. But there is a whole other kind of community that exists outside of a coven, and that's what I want to talk about today. It is, to me at least, it is super, super important to kind of exist outside of my own bubble. And that applies in a lot of areas of life, but specifically here, it's important to me to have friends who do things other than what I do. It's important for me to have connections who, are pagan or magical or occultists, but who are doing different things and are interested in things that I'm not interested in, are not interested in the things that I find super fascinating. And to have those connections outside of my own narrow little lane of like Gardnerian Wicca. And I mean, that's for a couple of reasons. One is I think it just kind of forces you to touch grass. Like you have to be reminded that the things that you care about are not the only things in the world. That there are other things that are just as important and just as interesting. And also, I think kind of like within a magical paradigm, it's a really important reminder that you don't have all the answers, because you're going to come up against people who do magic very differently than you do, and do magic potentially in ways that you don't like or that you kind of dismiss out of hand. And you'll find people as well who dismiss the way that you do magic out of hand. And like, it's just really important as a human being to be exposed to diversity of like perspectives and practices and people. Like, it's important to know people and talk to people and spend time with people who are different from you. That is a deep and fundamental and important part of being a person. And I think it's easy sometimes, particularly in specific traditions, but also just kind of in general, I think it's easy to isolate a little bit and to forget the importance of reaching out and making those connections. And within paganism, I think that's also super important for, yet another reason. I have not been keeping count. That's silly of me. Which is that from the outside, what we do all looks the same. I could tell you that Gardnerian Wicca is very different from Norse heathenism. And a Norse heathen would agree. But someone who's part of the dominant culture is going to look at both of those practices and go, now it kind of looks the same to me. And that's part of why we group these practices under the umbrella of paganism, is because from the point of view of the mainstream, these things are kind of all treated the same, for better and for worse. And I think there is kind of an important element of solidarity to that, where, like, you are practicing a minority religion, or even if you're not religious, you are, practicing some form of occultism or magic. And I think we have a habit. Everyone has a habit, but I speak for myself here. We have a habit of sort of saying, well, like the things that some other people do, like that's total bullshit, but my stuff is real and serious. I am not particularly into crystals. I make no secret about that. And sometimes I have a tendency to be like, oh, crystals, what the heck is that about? But on the other hand, witchcraft, where I make a little doll of someone and tie it up with string, that's for real going to affect the external world. And I don't know, there's kind of this internal, like, distancing ourselves from people who, from the dominant point of view, are not in any way distant from us. And I think it is helpful to keep that perspective and to remember that, like, this is a community, kind of just by dint of being in the minority relative to dominant religious, and insofar as there are dominant magical ideas as well. And, we kind of, like, we're penguins huddled together in the cold of Antarctica, and we got to stick together up to a certain point. And so, I think it is really important to make connections in the broader pagan and magical community outside of your own little space. The internet is really good for that and really useful for that. I have a lot of friends that I made through the internet who are some version of pagan or occult, but who are very different from myself, right? There are, like, Solomonic grimoire magicians, and there are heathens, and there are, people who are doing, like, Italian folk witchcraft or other forms of non-Wiccan witchcraft. And, like, that's good for me. That all keeps me grounded and keeps me connected in a way that I think is really important. And a thing that I have been thinking about in the past, when did I move here? I moved here in February. February is the 2nd month. August is the 8th month. In the past 6 months or so, as my primary source of community has mostly been online, I've been more and more aware of kind of the feeling of absence of in-person community, which I had when I was living back out east. I didn't, and still don't, go to a lot of, like, the big pagan festivals, largely because I just can't afford them. But there are other community events that get organized, and if you're sort of part of the pagan scene in your locale, you're aware of what those are, right? Like events at bookshops or open rituals or things like that. And one of the really big ones that I went to last year is I went to Philadelphia Pagan Pride with my friend Kerry, who was a vendor there. I will link her website down below because she's an artist and she does beautiful work. But I went and helped her, with her booth at Philadelphia Pagan Pride. And it was my first Pagan Pride, and it was great. It was so much fun. There's the magpie in me that likes looking at shiny things and going through all the vending booths and looking at things that people had made or were selling or things like that. Like, that was amazing. But also just meeting people and talking to people, making connections. There was an online friend there whom I had never met in real life and got to meet in person for the first time, which was amazing. And there were workshops and classes and rituals, and it was a really good day that kind of filled something in my heart. It filled that need for community and that need for connection. And so I'm thinking about Pagan Pride again, as we head toward the end of summer. Pagan Pride is a national project. I'll put the link to the website for the Pagan Pride Project down below. But it is sort of community organized in cities all across the United States. And I think it's just a US project. They might have international Pagan Pride days, but I don't know for sure. I know for sure that it's all over the US. And it's organized by people in the pagan community in various cities who think that community is an important thing and who want to go to the effort of creating a space for that to happen. And it's in the month of September every year. It's on a weekend in September in whatever cities it's in. And it's just good. It's just a good venue for the creation of community that lets people who are similar in this respect and then potentially very different from each other in other respects come together and spend time together and just celebrate that we are sort of people in connection to each other, even if we don't know each other very well. And when I was at Philadelphia Pagan Pride last year, it was just so wonderful. It was just so wonderful. So there was a Pagan Pride Day here in Salt Lake City last year. I'm still trying to figure out if there's going to be one again this year. Pagan Pride is volunteer led. It is put on by organizers who are local to the community, and they put a lot of work into it. So sometimes if they don't get the resources from the community, it might kind of drop. Which is why, everyone, you should go support your local Pagan Pride event. Find out if there is one near you, volunteer at it if you can, and just let's do community. This is a kind of community that we can do that doesn't involve paying hundreds of dollars to fly, like to take time off work and fly across the country to, and any of the like really good big pagan festivals, but things that require a pretty significant financial and time commitment. Pagan Pride Day is local, it's locally organized, it's bringing together people from your local community, and it's just an opportunity to spend time together, shop from vendors if that's the kind of thing that you like to do workshops, do rituals, and just be in community with people, which is something that right now I really, really feel the need for. So I am still in the process of trying to figure out if there's going to be a Pagan Pride here this year. I know there's a Pagan Pride in Reno, Nevada, which is close by West Coast standards. I actually know the people who organize Pagan Pride in Reno, and they're fabulous people, and they are probably the most dedicated to building Pagan Pride and pagan community of anyone I've ever known. And again, it's a tremendous amount of work that they put in, but they work really hard and really thanklessly to create that community space, and they do a really wonderful job of it. So yeah, just like, I don't know, I am thinking about community for myself, and that's got me thinking about the kinds of community that I had when I was back out east and how I can kind of reach out and recreate some of that here. And I think one of the really big ones is the Pagan Pride Project, which has done a lot of good for the pagan community as a whole. So I'll put a couple of links down below. Thank you for watching. If there is a Pagan Pride Day near you, go support it and tell the people who are running it that they're doing a good job, because they're putting in a lot of work to create those kinds of community spaces. And I think we often don't realize how important and valuable those spaces are until we suddenly don't have access to them anymore. So that's all I've got for now. I'm going to sign off, and I will see you sometime in the future. Bye.